Well, when it comes to these officers that have done, just an absolute failure of their jobs, what do you think would be an adequate penalty for them, if anything?
Um, yeah. So as you can see, his
You're good.
daughter going through there. Um, yeah. So I mean, I don't know the Texas Penal Code 100%. So obviously, like we'd have to look into that. Like what kind
Yeah.
of you know charges could you potentially bring up? I think besides criminal, if we want to just focus on department restrictions. I mean, easily. I don't think the department itself should do one, and I don't even think that Texas Department of Public Safety should do the investigation. I think it should be done by either, um, the FBI or ATF or a federal agency who has no personal gain essentially from this. If a Texas entity does it, there is still kind of that perception of, well, it's the state of Texas or some other locality in Texas that's doing it. They're going to want to make them look good. So I think you need to have an impartial investigation get done. Um,
Yeah.
and I think depending on the results of that investigation, if you can prove, and I know you kind of know this, unfortunately, it's not about what we know, it's about what we can prove is done. But I think if they can at least prove that there was some type of negligence, which I think is be a fairly easy thing to establish. If there's some type of negligence on the officers who responded, then at bare minimum, they should be fired.
Yeah.
I know some people may think, oh, it was this one-time thing. We know, unfortunately, that one-time thing cost 21 lives.
Yes.
So, some people may say, oh, they should get retraining. Well, they had training just a few months ago. I mean, literally just a few months ago, and this is what the result was. So I think at the bare minimum, they need to be fired and essentially not be able to be hired again as a police officer.
I agree.
They need to essentially be barred from being able to become a police officer in some other jurisdiction, whether it be state, local, or federal. You can find another profession. At a minimum, I think once you kind of dig into criminal charges, I mean, I think you could, in a way, you could probably work at how the Texas code is. You could probably work in for involuntary manslaughter, gross negligence, things like that. Because I mean, at the end of the day, yes, they were not the causation part of the children's death, but they also didn't act to prevent that. And that is their responsibility as a public, official or, peace officer is their duty to the public, and they essentially failed that duty. So, I mean, I think you could probably bring up some criminal charges, if not for the specific officers, maybe for the department in general, like the supervisors that were on the scene that essentially kept that lack of response going. But I think firing and barring from rehiring in any police department is an easy one. I think you could also easily go after all the officers that were at least inside the school. I can't really say for outside the school, but any officer that was inside the school and didn't act, I think you could easily go after for a civil lawsuit because, again, they failed to uphold their basic constitutional obligations. They have an obligation to protect and uphold specific rights for people. I mean, you can easily go with life and liberty right there are immediately taken away. Then you also have someone who's committing a criminal act, multiple homicides, and they're not doing anything. So, I mean, I think easily firing and not letting them become police officers, I think fairly easily they could be charged criminally. I mean, intent would be difficult to prove that they purposely, with malice and all that, did not want to act. I'm sure any good defense attorney would probably be able to argue some type of, fear, death, or some kind of argument. But I mean, at least involuntary manslaughter at a minimum, or conspiracy, because they essentially played along with it. They didn't do anything. And then civilly, I mean, I know you can't put a dollar amount to any child's life or anyone's life, especially a child. But I mean, the families deserve some type of compensation in some fashion. at least in some way, because I mean they lost, you know, everything. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're a parent and, you know, even if you had two kids and one died, I mean, you're still losing a huge piece of your life. And if you only have one child, I mean, that's huge. That's, I mean, utterly devastating.
Yeah.
I mean, any loss of life, but I mean, you know, any parent who has like this is their child, and they're they're a few years, 5-6 years old, and just in a blink of an eye it's gone. I mean, there's no amount of monetary compensation or honestly even criminal or civil charges or anything that's ever going to make any of this better.
Yeah.
But I mean, something has to get done. But I think, firing, barring them, and at minimum a civil lawsuit, it is the bare minimum that should be done.